This summer, Instacart is bringing back your favorites from 1999 with prices from 1999. That means 90s prices on juice pouches that ought to be respected, 90s prices on box mac and cheese, and 90s prices on ham, cheese, and cracker lunches. Enjoy all those throwbacks and more at throwback prices, only through Instacart. $4.72 maximum discount per $10 of eligible items. Limit one offer per order. Expires September 5th while supplies last. Discount based on CPI comparison.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Jamie East, and this is the Sunday 7.
I'm Mike Willer, in for Jamie East this week, and on today's episode of the award-winning Sunday 7, we find out about how fast AI is progressing in medicine, discover why James Dyson is obsessed with strawberries, and poke around in some elephant poo. Plus, Will Guyatt, the Smart 7's resident tech guru, checks in on Google's latest court loss and explains how Cloudflare might save your content from AI. If you're enjoying our episodes, please do like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We're here 7 days a week at 7 a.m. with the 7 biggest stories on the Smart 7 in association with Metro. Before we get started, though, it was on this day in 1885 that French scientist Louis Pasteur began a series of experimental treatments on 9-year-old Joseph Meister, who had been bitten by a rabid dog. The 14 injections had a dramatic effect, and the boy made a full recovery, living to a healthy 64 years of age, while the rabies vaccine was rapidly implemented around the world. Software giant Microsoft announced this week that it's about to engage in a major restructuring with about 9,000 jobs to go across its global workforce. The jobs are intended to streamline the organisation, but the news comes pretty quickly after CEO Satya Nadella disclosed that about a third of all coding at Microsoft is now done by AI. And as AI continues to expand, this week's other Microsoft announcement could mean bad news for the medical profession, as a new study showed that its AI health system has outperformed doctors when it comes to complex health diagnoses. That could potentially see what the company describes as a path to medical superintelligence, although they were keen to emphasise that there's no intention to replace doctors. Devin Singh is CEO and co-founder of healthcare technology company Hero AI, who are rolling out some of the Microsoft innovations in healthcare.
We're really dedicated to actually getting AI technologies into the hands of patients, into the hands of providers, and actually driving care forward with automation. What we've discovered is you can use large language models to understand context and to extract very rich signal information from the free text clinical notes that can help you understand the context of a patient such that you can create very rich process automations downstream.
Microsoft isn't the only company taking a high-tech AI-powered approach to medicine. Co-founder and CEO of payments company Stripe, Patrick Collison, founded a non-profit called the ARC Institute, which has a long-term goal of advancing scientific breakthroughs in complex diseases. He spoke to the New York Times Hard Fork podcast about the challenge and a new approach to medicine.
Humanity has never cured a complex disease. So this is most cancers, most cardiovascular disease, most neurodegenerative disease, most autoimmune disease, and so forth. Anyway, we've never cured one of these. So we set up ARC Institute. The idea was, hey, can we try a different strategy for going after these complex diseases? And one of the things that has been a real boost for us over the last 2 years is actually AI. I think the LLMs, as we interact with them, are obviously wonderful and enable all sorts of productivity enhancements and so forth. But, there's another language, DNA, the language of life. We can't at a human level understand what's going on there. It's kind of beyond what any individual can comprehend. And, what we've seen with some early work, and we published our first virtual cell model yesterday, actually by coincidence, the idea behind a virtual cell, if you actually had a useful, accurate way to perform kind of computational experiments where you try the thing in accordance with your hypothesis, in silico, as the biologists say, because they always like to make things complicated and fancy. But, really you just like computationally do your thing, then, again, if that was actually accurate, it would be an enormous accelerant.
And in the UK, the new 10-year plan for the NHS is heavily steeped in technology, from a new NHS app, which is intended to be a doctor in your pocket, to commitments to use AI and tech tools to speed up diagnosis and treatment. Peter Kyle is the UK's technology secretary, and he says that AI will have a dramatic impact, not just on health, but on the UK economy as a whole.
The world will look quite similar in 18 months than it does today, but the world will look very different in the workplace in 2035 than it does in 2025, and we need to prepare for that to happen, and we have to start acting today. But many of the new jobs that will be created, we don't have a title for yet, we don't have a job description for yet, so therefore I can't predict. But what I do know for fact is that people who have a broad education, who have good social skills, and are equipped to understand the fundamentals of how AI works and how you harness it for your good will be very well equipped to take advantage of those new jobs as they emerge into society.
This week has seen Elon Musk threatened with deportation by the American president, who has suggested that the man who invented Doge, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, should be investigated by Doge. It's been a rough week for the world's richest man, so it's about time to get our favourite Musk whisperer, the Smart 7's tech guru Will Guyatt, on the line. Will, is Elon heading for alligator Alcatraz?
The tit for tat between Elon and Trump via two social networks that don't even rank in the top 5 continues, but I doubt that Musk will be trading those t-shirts for a jumpsuit anytime soon. But it is likely he's now realising he's going to have a hard time bending the Donald to his way of thinking.
He's taken a fair few losses recently, hasn't he? His plan to take control of NASA seems to have fallen apart too.
He really has, and that's why Musk is seemingly so keen to keep the US electric vehicle subsidies that have essentially helped make him the world's richest person. And those subsidies are at the centre of why Musk is currently having a very public fallout with the president. For a long time, it looked as though US Congress was leaning on Musk and SpaceX for the future of NASA, but this week they've approved a new moon plan that Elon's very publicly objected to. And instead of pouring cash into SpaceX's reusable rockets, they've decided that legacy rockets and tech are more useful in the short to medium term. And that essentially stops billions of dollars that were headed into Elon's business. Also in the last couple of weeks, the president has suddenly, and rather unexpectedly, dropped support for a new Musk-backed entrepreneur who is being positioned as the new boss of NASA. Seems like the president and Elon really have had a falling out.
So maybe it's no surprise he's decided that fact-checking by humans, or community notes as they used to be called, should be binned at X. What's he up to?
We all knew that community notes were a bit crap and essentially introduced to stop X from having to fact-check and police content on the platform. But now Elon's allowing Grok, the in-house AI tool, to do the fact-checking. It turns out humans have realised just how janky and pointless community notes were, and they did nothing to regulate content. So there's been around a 50% decrease in their creation since January. So now, just get a chatbot to do it. This is an awful idea, but should we really be at all surprised?
Didn't he recently criticise his own AI, Grok, of being woke?
Yes, he did, and seemingly without any hint of irony. He was fuming against his own AI model because he didn't like the answers it was giving. When a Musk fan on X suggested that Grok had been manipulated by leftist indoctrination without understanding how it actually worked, Musk wholeheartedly agreed and said they were working on fixing it. Now, presumably that means forcing it to generate answers and views approved by Elon himself.
Apart from Elon, Google seems to be having some pretty bad times in 2025. What's the latest on their class action lawsuits?
It takes ages for complex legal cases to work through the pipes, for the arguments to be heard, and for the lawyers to get even richer. But this week we've heard that Google have to pay Californian Android users $300 million, split across all users in the state. The court suggested that Android devices were making data transfers without permission, while devices were in people's pockets or on the table. Now, of course, Google are going to appeal, saying that the verdict misunderstands that services are critical to the security, performance and reliability of Android devices, but of course they'd say that. And Google will also find out if they have to pay out millions to the rest of its users in the US next April on this case, and there's also a load of other cases just like this going through the courts. But it will take time, and of course, they will appeal them.
I'm still waiting for my $20 though, right? Where's the UK case at?
There are a couple of these Brits could get insert cash figure here cases going on here, but they're all years away from us getting any kind of payment. These kind of legal cases make great media headlines, but take far longer for the decision to be made and cash for ultimately to be paid out. So hold on, you're not getting your $20 quite yet.
And in relatively better news, someone has come up with a way to protect us from AI bots. What are Cloudflare up to?
Sometimes you've just got to stop and say, well played. Well played. Cloudflare are an internet infrastructure company that now hosts around a fifth of the entire internet. that's a lot of sites. They essentially have local mirrors of big chunks of content which make the internet run faster than it otherwise would. Now, they've noticed that AI companies are essentially trying to hoover up everything posted online to train their AI models, and it's actually slowing the internet down. Now, much of this scraping is done without any permission or payment to the original creators of content. Now, thanks to Cloudflare, companies can now choose to block these AI tools by default or require payment for content to be taken. Right now, content creators can nominate a flat fee or leave contact details for AI companies to approach them to negotiate a deal. Now, this is huge news, as businesses around the world have been scratching their heads to see how the tables could be turned, and the boffins at Cloudflare have come up with a great answer.
So does that mean that the content is safe from the tentacles of large language models?
This new process is currently in beta, which means they're ironing out the bugs with many of their largest customers. But it's potentially a really neat solution to this problem. But let's see how the AI companies react to finally having to pay to nick big chunks of the internet.
Still to come on the Smart 7 in association with Metro, Europe struggles to cope with a heat dome, and James Dyson has been working on strawberries. This week has seen a heat wave across Europe, which included a record temperature for day one of Wimbledon. While it's been pretty hot in the UK, the temperature has been at record levels for most of the week across France, Spain and Italy. At least 8 people have died so far, from farmers to a young American tourist in Paris, and the UN's climate agency has warned that these kinds of events will become more common due to human-induced climate change. This bout of high temperatures is being driven by something called a heat dome, which is currently parked above Europe. Kate Abnet is the European climate and energy correspondent for Reuters, and she explains what that means.
A heat dome is a blocking weather system. It's an area of high pressure in the atmosphere that gets stuck because the atmospheric dynamics around the high pressure system stop it from moving. And it works like putting a lid on a boiling pot, and the high pressure system traps hot air below it, which heats up and compresses to form this dome. And this dome intensifies heat in the region below. It's a phenomenon we've seen in other regions as well. And just in the last few weeks, we saw a heat dome occur in the United States. There is a global trend at play here linked to climate change, which is that the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which are mostly from burning fossil fuels, has raised the planet's average overall temperature over time.
With a heatwave leading to record temperatures, it's probably not the best time for the kickoff of the Women's Euros, which got underway on Wednesday. And with next summer's World Cup due to take place across the US, Mexico and Canada, there have been calls for sporting organisations to do more to protect players in extreme heat. Professor Vincent Gouttebarge is the FIFPRO's medical director, and he says the organisation is prepared.
Some very challenging weather condition that we anticipated a couple of weeks ago already, that was already communicated to FIFA, and I think the past few weeks was also confirmation of our worry that the heat condition will play a negative role for the performance and the health of the player.
Inventor James Dyson has been responsible for plenty of innovation in his long career. He reinvented the vacuum cleaner, he freshened up the world of hand dryers, and more recently, he's been busy with hair straighteners. But his love of invention isn't limited to shiny grey objects. He's also been busy dabbling in the world of soft fruit. It may seem odd, but it's partly driven by environmental sustainability concerns. As it turns out, Britain's winter strawberry habit is 90% made up of imports, and the average batch clocks up over 2,000 air miles. The new Dyson initiative takes a fresh approach to agriculture, as James explains.
We need to produce food in England. We need to produce really good food. So we asked a group of engineers at Dyson what they could do to improve some of the activities on the farm. One of the things we came up with was a vertical growing system.
They've come up with a remarkable rotary system powered by renewable energy that uses collected rainwater for irrigation. Angel Aneglov is the Glasshouse manager at Dyson Farming, and he's been working on this project for 5 years.
We did the whole thing ourselves. Every bit of wiring, every nut, bolt, fastener.
Spent a lot of blood, sweat and tears into this rig for the last 2 years. It's like having a child. Every single bolt I've got a relationship with. Still
to come on the Sunday 7 in association with Metro. We take a lift in a flying taxi and poke around in elephant poo.
Right after this. If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back.
Quantum computing is the next big thing, so much so that this week the European Union launched a 5-year plan to put it at the centre of its critical infrastructure. The EU is worried it is falling behind the US and China, and that will see those countries able to move faster and solving issues like drug discovery, battery technology, and even navigation tech. There's also a huge risk to security, which largely depends on what's known as public key cryptography, which will struggle to stand up to quantum-powered hackers. The UK, however, seems to be making great strides in quantum computing, with Oxford University leading the way. David Lucas is a professor of physics at Oxford, and he was celebrating a key step forward this week as Oxford researchers successfully connected two quantum processors to form a quantum computer.
The world is quantum. Right, you probe down to the level of chemistry and chemical reactions and things. It's how do atoms and molecules interact.
The ability to connect processors across what is known as a distributed network should allow the processor to work faster and in parallel, according to Dougal, who is the project lead at Oxford.
So building a large quantum computer is very technically challenging, and what we showed that you could do is you could split one of these large quantum computers up into several smaller modules and interconnect them using these optical fibre links. The advantage of this is that you can then preserve the reduced complexity of the smaller quantum processor while still being able to get these processors to act together to form one single fully connected quantum computer.
Natalie Ares is an associate professor of Oxford University's Department of Engineering, and she says that the enhanced quantum computing power will have a huge impact on the potential for AI.
As we develop quantum computing, I think it's inevitable to think not only as we do now how AI can help us develop these technologies further, but also how these technologies might enhance AI.
Now, if you're fed up getting stuck in London traffic in a black cab or an Uber, then you might be quite excited to hear what Joby Aviation is up to in Dubai. They've just successfully conducted the first test flight of a flying taxi in the United Arab Emirates. The fully electric flying cab could revolutionise city travel and is part of Dubai's efforts to integrate airborne transport into its transport network in the next 12 months. The cab takes off vertically and then flies up to 100 miles before switching back to vertical mode for landing. Anthony Curie is the UAE General Manager for Joby Aviation. He says the future is here.
This is an experimental aircraft that has been flying in the US. It is its first international piloted inhabited transition flight, which meant that this is the full profile of a typical aerial taxi journey. It takes off vertically, it transitions into the wing, it can fly up a couple of miles and then comes back to land vertically.
Now, we do love a good poo story here on the Sunday 7. Not your personal story, but the story of a poo-related scientific breakthrough. Recently, we've had poo pills, which could be a breakthrough against antibiotic-resistant superbugs, and we've had Welsh water voles with glittery poo. But this week, we're taking things up a notch. We're talking about elephant poo. The good people at Chester Zoo have been gathering fresh dung from animals, which they then process and collect cells that could in theory be used to create sperm and eggs for a future conservation programme in an initiative that they've christened Poo Zoo. Sue Walker is the head of science at Chester Zoo.
The idea behind Poo Zoo is actually taking cells from fecal material, banking them in what we call a living state, so they're still alive, and it could be used in 30, 40 years from now to save species. That's the gist of what we're trying to do.
Susanna Williams is a research fellow at the University of Oxford, and once the poo has been cleaned up, it heads to her lab.
So it's been literally a case of optimizing on very basic principles of
size of the cells, of size of bacteria, how big they are, how they move, how you can separate them, and how you can quantify them. We're working on setting up methods which we are reliable and robust for individual species, and all the species are different. So we're literally collecting feces at time 0 and then just leaving it on a windowsill for 12 hours. And then, right, can we still get cells? Leaving it for 24 hours, right, can we still get cells? We can. Let's start pushing the boundaries. Let's see how long we can wait. Can we do something else? If we ship it in a bag, will there be anything when we get there at the other end?
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend. Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
6-time Emmy Award winner and Tony Award nominee Jean Smart returns to Broadway for 12 weeks only in a world premiere play about a writer whose words are her only way out.
Call me Izzy.
Get tickets at callmeizzyplay.com.